All right, we got another guest right now. Leah Long joins us with the National Federation of Independent Businesses focused on small businesses. She is the director for Mississippi and Alabama. Leah, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Great to be with you again.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the report that came out yesterday, that consumer confidence report that popped out showing pretty significant month-over-month growth. May was the first time in 4 or 5 months that number has not gone down, and it was up significantly. What does that mean for small businesses in particular in our part of the world?
Yeah, so it means that their kind of confidence level is coming up, and that's important. One of the big things is it happened last week that in the big beautiful bill in the U.S. House, they did include that 20% small business deduction that I know you and I have talked about quite a bit on here. So I think that definitely helps. And, inflation's going down, jobs are getting created, and so that's kind of where they're at. Being a small business owner, it's getting, back to being normal. They kind of went through a slump there for a little bit in the first part of the year, but I think it's picking up now.
And remind me of the details of that. When we say small businesses and that 20% deduction, we're talking about sole proprietorships, subchapter S that have money flowing through to personal income tax returns. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. So if you're a pass-through entity, you get that deduction on the federal level. And
so it's a 20%. What are the mechanics of that?
Yes, the 20% deduction, so your first 20% of profit you're not paying taxes on. And so with that, it's one of those things I think if you look at Mississippi, if this is reinstated and made permanent, that we have numbers that 17,000 plus new jobs could be created in Mississippi over the next decade. And, if small business owners don't get this reinstated, then it's going to cost jobs. They're going to mean less growth, and it's going to be more uncertainty for Mississippi's Main Street business.
And so just doing the quick math, and, forgive me, I've only got so many fingers and toes. If you make $100,000 in profit through a small business that you show on a tax return, the first $20,000 of that profit is a deduction on your overall tax liability. Is that saying it the right way?
Yes, that's a good way to explain it.
Gotcha. What are you hearing anecdotally, right? I mean, we can look at consumer confidence reports and go, okay, that's big picture stuff that covers the entire United States. From the businesses that you deal with in Mississippi and Louisiana, whether we're talking about small business or we're talking about larger industry, what are you hearing from them?
When we got past presidential election, there was some uptake and optimism, and then there was some, downtake. But I think now that the big, beautiful bill has passed and we are sending it over to the Senate, I think people are excited because it is kind of reinstating some things that desperately need to be done. And now that that's passed, and, I think everyone was kind of hung up on if this is going to pass or if it's not and what's going to be put in it. And I think moving forward, as this continues to move through the Senate and eventually reaches President Trump's desk, I think optimism will continue to move, especially for small business owners. That was our number one priority so far this year with NFIB on a federal level, is to make sure that deduction was reinstated but also made permanent. And so that on our level, the small business level, is one of the most exciting things right now, moving the optimism forward.
I had Peter Costa on as a guest a couple of weeks ago. He's former governor with the New York Stock Exchange and a market analyst with CNBC. And I made an analogy. I said, I feel like the market is like a seventh grade teenage girl, overreacts to every rumor that pops up. And I say that lovingly because I have a teenage daughter. We saw huge reaction to tariff news, and it was good and then it was bad, and it was good and it was bad. And where are we in the tariff conversation in terms of outlook for businesses? I know you talked to people that were really concerned. I talked to people that were really concerned, especially in the agricultural community. But small businesses that receive, some of their product from overseas have already seen prices go up, and those are going to be reflected in retail prices as well. Has that fear or uncertainty calmed down a little bit with the people that you're working with and visiting with?
We didn't necessarily gauge our membership directly on tariffs. Of course, you've heard it from a few people, but their major issue, in the last 4 months has been this deduction because they know that that's going to impact them worse if it's not reinstated versus the tariffs. Tariffs come and go. And so, we didn't really engage. You did have a few, voice their opinion and in the country in general, people voice their opinion on it. But from a small business perspective, their biggest concern was that deduction.
The job growth numbers from last month, I think it was plus 177,000 jobs. It was a bigger number than a lot of people that were kind of analyzing that thought it was going to be. Are you seeing that reflected locally?
Yeah, job growth, I think, one thing was important. I know the Mississippi legislature is going back in at 11 today is, they're making it more business-friendly in Mississippi. We're going to phase out the income tax, and I always say, they're going into budget, and I did see the numbers, and it's going to be a slim budget, so I applaud them for being fiscally responsible so we can continue to make sure that phase-out happens and eventually eliminate it. And so I think that's going to add to it. If you make it easier to do business in the state that you're in, then you're going to have more jobs created because your business owners are going to thrive and they're going to continue to reinvest in their companies, and that creates more jobs.
We talked with Governor Reeves just a little while ago about the surplus that Mississippi has, the budget surplus because of being fiscally responsible over the last few years, about $2 billion. Is that a business concern that money is sitting as opposed to kind of being either put into projects or redistributed to taxpayers, or is that more of an individual concern?
I think it's a little bit of both. As a surplus, we always say we'd love to see it come back to the hardworking Mississippians that do pay their taxes. And I think, they did give small business owners and, just Mississippians in general a win in the normal session by lowering the personal income tax. And so I think that's where we're at. That there's a surplus, hopefully, in future projects, and hopefully it can continue to be passed down to the Mississippians that do pay the taxes there, because in reality it is their money. So I hope that that's going to be the mindset moving forward as they continue to keep the budget slim and continue to make Mississippi better for business owners.
Yeah. Well, and I thought the governor had a good answer on that as well. He said, while, yes, we would like to, we're okay with spending that on projects that need to be done and, okay with finding ways to get it back to taxpayers, I'd rather it be sitting in the bank than being spent irresponsibly. So I suppose there's something on that front as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Visiting with Leah Long. She is the Mississippi and Louisiana Director for the National Federation of Independent Small Business, NFIB, joining us this morning. Overall business climate, what does it feel like to you right now? Is this a business-friendly time in Mississippi, in Louisiana, in the Southeast?
I think coming off the last few years where it's been, unfortunately, not the best climate for business owners just due to inflation and over-regulated mandates from the federal government, right now it's getting better. And I think kind of ties back into this 20% small business deduction. As that continues to move through the process, hopefully gets permanently put back in there, it's going to affect the climate. It's going to make it better. And, just on a Mississippi level, the things that they've done this last session, there's been a few workforce things. And I think moving forward, as we continue to make the climate better, we need to really focus on workforce investment and making sure that we do have skilled labor available for these jobs that, hopefully we're creating in the future. That's one big thing. You got to tie it all together. It's like a three-legged stool, obviously. You need the workforce, you need the help, and you need the employers to be able to do their jobs. And I think just owning, operating a business, it is kind of like a three-legged mindset. You got to have all that to make it work.
Interesting stuff. Leah, always appreciate your time. Safe travels. Know you're on the road today, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
Leah Long from NFIB. She's the director for Mississippi and Louisiana. She's out on the road just about every day, visiting with business owners across the neighboring states. And I think good to hear that overall it feels like there is small business confidence, which I'm not sure has always been there. There's been a lot of uncertainty in recent years, and to hear people that are a little more confident about where we are economically feels like a good thing in the business community. We'll get to some of your messages on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. C Spire, inspired by you. That's coming up next. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. A little over half an hour left with you.